Well, howdy YouTube, Unky Joe here, Unky Joe's Playhouse. Today, we're embarking on a new series of videos. I promised it to you that we would be doing a full line of Synology-related NAS videos, and this is part one of those series of videos. Now, you're probably wondering, Joe, you got that Synology NAS nearly 6 months ago. Why so long in coming? Well, I like to be concise and complete when I give you guys and ladies information on how to use a product. So I like to know what I'm talking about. And during the last few weeks especially, I've really gotten to know my Synology NAS and how to get it configured and set up. And so I know how much I struggled with figuring this out. There's not really a lot of good documentation out there on Synology. Well, video documentation, which is what I prefer. I prefer to be tutored on the product. Synology's series of videos, they don't really go into details. They just tell you, bing, bang, boom, here's how this stuff works. But me, I'm a meticulous and I'm a meticulous guy, and I wanted to know soup to nuts how to set it up. So that's what these videos are mainly going to be teaching you, is how to avoid all the pitfalls that I avoided and get your NAS up and running and on its feet quickly. Now, as I discussed in my live stream last Sunday, Father's Day, Morton had been hit with a flag on his channel for posting an Exponology vid. I'm surmising that somebody reported him. Somebody didn't like him or his video or whatever. You know how people are on the internet. Morton thinks it might have been a bot that was just searching the internet. But I haven't been hit. Other people with Exponology videos have not been hit. Morton was. And so I have a feeling it's more than likely somebody didn't like his content or didn't like something he was doing and felt the need to report him, which then triggered them to flag that video. But to be safe, I have taken down all my Exponology videos, and I'm going to tell you why. Because anytime I show you guys how to circumvent it's not really copy protection, but it's in the what I guess I'm trying to say is I was violating the spirit of the DMCA Copyright Act. And basically what it says is, even though Synology is using open source software, they have written proprietary software on top of that. So by me showing you how to do a bootloader and bypass the normal means of getting a Synology, that's not being fair in the spirit of the law. The letter of the law, well, that's up for interpretation, as we all know. But one, I can't afford a copyright strike or a content strike on my channel as it's trying to grow. And two, it really would annoy the shit out of me if I did. So I voluntarily removed those videos. They may be going back up at some time in the future. I still have copies of them, but I've deleted them off of the YouTube website. So anytime you hear me refer to Synology, it could apply to Exponology as well. What I won't be able to tell you moving forward is how I got Exponology up and running. And frankly, I don't need to. There's plenty of documentary evidence and instructions out on the internet if you just do a Google search. So, and there's still some other good Exponology videos on the internet that can tell you how to set it up. It's not trivial, but like I say, there's some good tutorials out there, and basically that's how I learned to do it. So if you want to play with Synology, but you can't afford a Synology NAS, and you're looking to Exponology, great. I'm not going to cast dispersions on you or make any judgments about you. I don't feel it's right for me to use it in a production environment because there is their software that they've written, which is what I mainly. Initially, when I set up my Exponology, I just wanted it for the SHR, the Synology Hybrid RAID. But moving forward, as I'm using their applications, I think it's only fair that I pay for their product, which is why I have a Synology NAS here. So, with that being said, I guess I have talked enough. Let's get on with part one of the Synology NAS series of videos. Alright, so let's get logged into this bad boy. And give you the specs. Alright, so I have already set up my little icons over here. I'll show you how I did it here in a minute. But first things first, let's go to Control Panel. I'm going to go into Info Center, and you'll see this is a DS3615XS Synology NAS. It is got a 3.6 gigahertz processor, 2 cores, and 4 gig of memory. It is running DSM 6.1.7-15284. That is one version below 6.2. So the videos I'm going to be doing on Synology are going to be based on the 6.1.7 image. So your mileage might vary. But there you go, you can see how we have it configured, etc., and what model number it is. So something I noticed when setting up this new NAS, let me move this up so you can see it. This is normally how your little sidebar starts. We'll cover that in a minute, but something I noticed when setting up the Synology NAS, and part of the setup when you first get into it is you have to log on and you have to install the DSM, which is what I did. Normally though, what Synology would do is create an account called admin, and then you would create a password for that account when you logged in. I notice now it does not do that. Synology now asks you to create a username and a password. And so that was one of the complaints I had, I guess, before 6.1.7, is that when you initially installed Synology, it would create that admin account and you need to go out later and disable it. So now if we go into Control Panel and go to Users, Synology does create the admin account and it does create the guest account, but it now disables that account. I have it enabled for another reason, but normally it looks like this. So normally when you come up, you'll have the username that you created, which in my case was Adama, and then you'll have an admin and a guest account, and now by default they are both disabled. So I just wanted to share that with you. So like I was saying, normally when you let me get my window up here. Normally when you start Synology, you get a couple of these. You get System Health and Resource Monitor, I think. So the first thing you'll want to do, I like to add some more dashboard widgets. So the first thing you want to do is come down here though, and you want to come to the bottom and you want to click and drag that down so that it fills more of the screen. That way when you go to add, I'm going to add the storage information thingy. I'm going to move it down here. And I'm also going to add connected users. So I like to be able to see those. And then that way you can drag the individual bar and put it where you wanted. So that's how I like to get my NAS configured and have the widgets configured, is with this menu over here on the right. And now I can shrink this up a little bit. All right. The other thing you can do is on this menu over here, on your main menu, any of these icons that you want to appear on your desktop. For example, let's do Log Center. I want the Log Center to appear on the desktop. You just simply right click on it and add to desktop. All right. Same thing, Storage Manager, Security Advisor, any of those you can put right on the desktop. So right now I have Package Manager, Control Panel, File Station, DSM Help, Storage Manager, and Log Center set up. Alright, so now the next thing I want to cover is, you notice we don't have any volumes set up on this Synology NAS yet. So I want to go out and I want to take care of that. But first I want to talk to you about how Synology does their RAID. So Synology has this great little tool on their website called the Synology RAID Calculator. And the link is up above there. I'll try to remember to put it in the comments section. But basically what you want to do is drag the number of drives that you have to the Synology NAS. So let's pretend we have 3 1 terabyte drives. Hang on a second, I grabbed the wrong window. So we have 3 1 terabyte drives. So I'm going to do 1, 2, and 3. I just click that 3 times. And then what it allows you to do is select the type of RAID you wish to be compared. So if you were to check Synology Hybrid RAID versus RAID 5, you'd get the same amount of storage and the same amount of hard drive space used for protection. Now keep in mind though, something SHR, Synology Hybrid RAID, allows you to do that regular RAID does not allow you to do, to my knowledge. outside of a Synology NAS. Now, it may be different with the Synology. You may be able to set up an initial RAID 5 array and add to it later. So don't quote me for sure on this. But I know with Synology hybrid RAID is you can start with 2 or 3 disks, and you can go ahead and expand it. You can mismatch the disks. For example, say I didn't want to say I only had a 1 terabyte and then 2 500 gigabyte hard drives. Well, then if I set it up with SHR, it would give me about a terabyte of space, 500 gig used for protection, and 500 left unused, the same way if I did RAID 5. So it allows you to mix and match, and then I can come back in later. Say, for example, I want to replace that 500 gig hard drive and with a 1 terabyte. Well, I can do that. And you can see how the array automatically changes to take advantage of that. Whereas RAID 5, you are losing 500 gig hard drive. Plus, you're losing a 1 terabyte hard drive. Well, let me clarify that. You're losing 500 meg for protection, but you're losing 1 terabyte of unused space. So that's another benefit of the SHR, is it gives you the ability to mix and match your drive sizes in the Synology hybrid RAID setup. Now, there is some question as to whether Synology hybrid RAID is a good idea for businesses. In fact, you're going to find in the NAS that I have, the 3615, Synology hybrid RAID is disabled. You have to go out and edit a file on your Synology device in order to use Synology hybrid RAID. So keep that in mind. The other option you have is SHR2, which basically gives you 2 disks of redundancy. However, you need a minimum of 4 drives in order to make that happen. And what it's going to happen is it's going to be an even split between the drives, half for redundancy, half for storage space. And you can see the effect of adding additional drives to the system. So if I were to populate that completely with 1 terabyte drives, I get 10 terabyte of storage with 2 terabyte used for data protection. You get the general idea. Now, the other options you have, let me go ahead and switch that back to SHR. The other options you have are RAID 0. So in that case, you get a full 3 terabyte of disk space. Not recommended though. That's if one of those drives fails, you lose all your data. I could do a RAID 1, but I still lose a great bit of space. RAID 1 is better suited to 2 drives. Then I could do a RAID 6. Nope, don't have enough hard drives. But I could do a RAID 6, and that gives you an idea of the space. I could do a RAID 10. That gives you an idea of the space. So go out on Synology's website and play with this RAID calculator. What we're going to do in our instance is we're going to set up a couple of SHR volumes. So let's get over there and get that done. Alright, so I'm on my Synology NAS. Now I'm going to go into Storage Manager. And then I'm going to come down here. Right now I have 7 unused disks. So I'm going to come down here to HDD SSDs. And you can see I've got 1, 2, 3 50 gig hard drives and 3 10 gig hard drives. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up 2 different shared volumes just to show you how it's done. Pardon me. They're both going to be SHR volumes. I don't mess with RAID 5 or RAID 6 or RAID 10. Now in a corporate environment I might, just depending on how many drives I had, but for the sake of this video we're going to set up 2 shared volumes. And so what I want to do is come over here to the volume button, click on create, and I'm going to choose the quick mode. This one is going to create an SHR volume, which we just discussed. And I'm going to deselect all the disks because I want to manually go in and make sure I only select the 3 50 gig hard drives. So that's disk 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to click next. It's going to warn me that all data on the newly added hard disk will be erased. I'm sure I want to continue. Of course I am. I'm fearless. And of course I'm going to use the Btrfs file system. And then we're going to give it a description. I'm going to call this volume 1. Let's do this. We'll call it Test Volume 1. Click on Next. Verify all the settings. It's going to be Synology Hybrid RAID with data protection on 1 disk. And we'll get about 90 gigabytes out of that. So that's about right. So we'll let that go ahead and save, and then it will start creating the volume in the background, as you can see. So while that's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and create another volume, and I'm going to do the same thing, quick, SHR. I'm going to deselect all the drives, and then I'm going to select my 3 10 gig hard drives. It warns me. I'm going to put ButterFS, and I'm going to do Test Volume 2. Next, and that'll give us about 10.7 gig of space. We'll go ahead and apply. We'll let that run. And we should see, if we minimize this, we have 2 volumes. We have a volume being created and one being verified. Now, let me warn you, if you have 1 terabyte drives, this process takes maybe 12 hours. But if you have larger than 1 terabyte drives, like if you have a couple of 6 terabytes and a 4 terabyte, this initialization and verification could take days. So, but the beauty is that while these volumes are being created, you can copy data back and forth to the volume. It will be at a slower rate, but it will function, and you will have the full capability of copying to that drive. So don't let that stop you or scare you. It's having to build parity in the background, and that is a pretty intense operation, and it's probably one of the best tests you can ever do, even on a new hard drive and an old hard drive, because the reads and writes going back and forth between those disks can get pretty intense. So just be patient, let your volumes create, go find something to do. Just know that if you want to copy data onto these volumes, it's going to take a considerably longer time than it normally would. So to put not too fine a point on it, I should say, if you click the drop down here, it'll even tell you that it's verifying disks in the background. It's 57% complete. Now, read this in red. Parity consistency check is currently running on volume 1 and may affect overall system performance. So keep that in mind. Any copies you do to this volume are going to be slower than normal. Now my volumes are small, so you see volume 2 is already completed, and volume 1 only has about 30% more to go. So as you can see, both my volumes have now been created. They're both normal. Come to the disk group, there's nothing in there. Come to my hard drives and go back up to my volume view, and both volumes are ready to go, ready to copy data. Alright, so now the next thing we need to do, the next thing I would do if I were you, is go ahead and create some users, and then after we create our users, we'll create some shares, and we'll try to copy some data to this NAS. Now, the one thing I want you to keep in mind is there are a couple of different ways to set up your Synology NAS. Keep in mind that I have a domain controller. I am running a Windows Server 2016 domain controlled network here at Uncle Joe's Playhouse. However, there's 2 ways to set up your Synology. You can set up your Synology as a standalone server, like a workgroup or a member server or workgroup server, or you can set it up, add it to the Active Directory domain as an actual domain member that gets its marching orders from the domain controller. We're going to do the former and not the latter in this video. We'll do the latter. We'll do the setup of a Synology NAS on a domain controlled network and show you what the implications and ramifications of that are. But for today's video, for this video, we're just going to use it as a standalone device. So what I want to do is come over to Control Panel, and one of the things I want you to do is go to your network settings, and I've already given my server a name. You'll do this when you initially set up your Synology NAS. It'll take you through the steps to name it and all that good stuff. But if you wanted to change the name, you could do it here. Network interfaces, just for the sake of this video, I'm using DHCP. It's getting an IP address automatically. It's getting the gateway information automatically, all that stuff, DNS servers, all automatically through DHCP, and that's the way we're going to keep it. So the next thing I want to do is go back to Control Panel and go to User. And this is where we actually create our users. So we're going to create a couple of users. We'll create one user called, we'll call this one Mom. Call it Mom's account. And we'll give it a password. Make it a secure password. Now you have some options here. If we had an email address in there, it would send a notification to the newly created user. We could disallow the user to change their account password. I'm not going to worry about it for right now. I'm going to just leave it on password is always valid. And or you could generate a random password for them. So that gives you some, if you want to generate secure passwords, that's what I would use. Click on Next. And then you need to pick out what group you want Mom to belong to. Right now I just want her to be a member of the users group. She's not an administrator and she doesn't use the web services, so I'm just going to click on Next here. And then if I had some shared folders, I could assign her permission to those. I don't, so I'm not going to worry about it. And then I could set quotas if I needed to on the volumes. That comes in handy to keep one user from using up all the space on a volume. And then whatever permissions I'm going to allow her to have when she logs on to the Synology NAS. So if you're not planning on letting Mom log into this interface on the Synology NAS, then don't allow any of these applications. But I'm going to allow her access to File Station. Now, this has nothing to do with the file sharing. Okay, just FYI. This is so Mom can, or whoever the user is, can actually come up here and log in to the Synology interface and get that little file manager package. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to click on Next. I could set upload and download speed limits if I wanted to. I'm going to leave these alone. Click on Next. I'm going to verify and confirm the settings and then click on Apply. All right. Same thing here, except I'm going to create one called Dad. Again, choose a super secret password. Okay, I'm not going to send a notification mail. Next. I want Dad to be an administrator though. Okay, so I'm going to allow Dad to be an administrator. And I don't have any assigned folders. Quota for Dad is unlimited. And I'm going to give Dad access to the desk station, the file station, and universal search. Dad has no speed limit ratings, and so we'll go ahead and apply that. So now I have created two accounts, one for Dad, one for Mom, and then, of course, my login account. So the next thing we want to do is actually create a shared folder. So if we come over here to the left and go up one, we'll click on Shared Folder. So creating a shared folder, just as simple as making sure you're on the shared folder over here and coming up to Create and choosing Create. Now give it a name. We'll call this Photos. And then I'm going to just give it a name of Family Photos. Now I need to choose the volume. I could either put it on volume 1, which is the 90 gig volume or 87 gig, or I could put it on volume 2, which is the 10 gig volume. So I don't have that many pictures. I'm just going to put this over on volume 2. Now, really nice thing is if this, say this was your porn collection, let's just be honest guys, if you have a porn collection, let's say that was your porn collection, and you don't want that to appear when people double click on My Network Places, you could hide that by clicking this here as well, okay? And then you could also hide the subfolders and files from users without permission so that people couldn't even look in that directory if they didn't have the proper permissions. So that's kind of what those are there for, okay? Now, I always recommend you enable the recycle bin and restrict it to administrators only. And then you can click on this link here, which will tell you how to set up the emptying schedule on the recycle bin. But I find that always comes in handy in case somebody were to delete a file by mistake. Okay, we'll click on next here. I can also encrypt this shared folder, but it tells me right down here your key manager is not initialized, initialize and manage encryption keys, and mount shared folders automatically, and then it has a link on how to do that. So really intuitive kind of help here. But for us, we're just going to click on next. Okay, we can enable data checksum for advanced integrity, and that cannot be modified once the shared folder is created. So you only have one chance to create that. So if I do that, I think we'll do that because our pictures are very important to us, and we want to protect them. Okay. Now it says, to ensure service quality, we recommend not enable data checksumming when shared folder will be used for the following: database or virtual machines, storing video recordings of surveillance. So we're not using either one of those. And I can also put a quota on that, 5 gig or 4 gig or whatever I wanted to. Let's go ahead and do that as well. Let's do, we'll limit that to 5 gigabytes, or gigabits, sorry. Gigabytes, I was right the first time. Click on next. So it's going to create a share called Photos. It contains family photos on volume 2. Recycle bin is enabled, administrators only. Integrity protection is enabled, and we have a quota of 5 gigs. So I'll go ahead and apply that. And now it's real simple. Assigning permissions. Who do you want to read? Who do you want to have no access? And who do you want to read write? And it's pretty much that simple. Okay. I know I want Adama to have read write. I know I want admin is not active, so I'm not going to use them at all. Dad, I want him to have read write, but Mom, I only want her to be able to read. She won't be saving any files there, but Dad might, and I know I will. Go ahead and click on OK. And there you go, easy peasy. The volume has been created, and it is there for us to use. Alright, so I want to create one more shared folder just for shits and giggles. So we'll go up to create and then choose create. I'm going to call this one movies. Give it a description, whatever you want to call it. This time I'm going to choose volume 1, 87 gig available. I'm going to choose the same settings I did for the previous folder, keeping the recycle bin enabled. I'm not going to encrypt it, and I'm not going to enable data checksum. This data is not real critical. It's not that important if we were to lose some of it. However, I do want to put a limit of, that's 100 gig drive, so we'll give 50 gigabytes of it to the movie shares. Okay, verify our settings here. The quote is at 50 gig. We'll go ahead and click on apply. And then we want Adama to have read write. We want Dad to have read write, but we only want Mom to be able to read only. Click on OK, and bing bang boom, we have the share created. If we click our little drop down arrow here, we get a description, we get some advanced permissions information, recycle bin, the quota, the shared folder size, file compression, whether it's on, and data integrity, whether it's on or not. So that in a nutshell is how hard it is for you to create a shared folder. Well, there you go. That's the end of part 1 of the Synology NAS series of videos I'm going to be doing. And in our next episode, we'll be covering the security settings, how to secure your Synology NAS, and some of the other settings on the Synology NAS that I had to learn the hard way. So in order to save you some trouble and get you right to work and get your feet on the ground up and running on your Synology NAS, like I said, we'll be covering security in the next episode. So I hope you found the video entertaining and informative as always. Please give us a thumbs up down below if you liked it. Leave your comments down in the comments section. We take PayPal and Patreon if you're so inclined. Come back and see us again. We got more exciting videos coming up for you on the Synology NAS and on PBX systems, and we're still going to be doing setting up another test lab domain using Zenchal, if anybody has ever heard of that free and open source program. And we're going to play around a little bit with Synology's Active Directory server component as well. So lots of exciting stuff coming up. So come back and see us again soon. And don't forget that we will see you on the other side.